So today, boys, we're going to be learning about text features. The Common Core standard that aligns with text features is RI 4.7. RI stands for Reading Informational Text, so we're going to be focused on those informational and nonfiction texts today that are going to give us true facts. We're going to interpret information presented visually, orally, or quantitatively, example given in charts, graphs, diagrams, timelines, animations, or interactive elements on web pages, and explain how the information contributes to an understanding of the text in which it appears. Now that's a lot of information. Let's break it down a little bit. Interpret literally means just to explain the reasoning or to make sense of something. So we're going to explain the reasoning or the meaning or make sense of the information given. And the information given is given in various forms. Visually, that means kind of like things that we can see. So images, photographs, illustrations. Orally, what the text is saying or what the author is trying to convey. And then quantitatively, that is meaning in quantity or in data collection, and so something that can be measured. And those can be shown in charts, graphs, diagrams, timelines, etc. And we're going to explain how the information contributes or helps our understanding of an overall text. Okay? So, what are text features? You might be asking yourself that question. Well, text features include all of the parts of a text that are not the main body of the text, and they help the reader comprehend and find information in nonfiction texts. There are two types of nonfiction text features. The first are text features that are within the text, and the second are graphic or visual form of text features. And those visual or graphic form of text features help us visualize the information that the author is providing us in a more aesthetically pleasing way. And if you are a visual learner, those are for you. So we're going to start with the in-text text features. We're going to start with headings and subheadings. A heading is a title at the top of a page or a section that tells the reader what they will be reading about. And a subheading is a smaller title that breaks up the heading into even smaller categories. We have an example here. The heading is what plants need, and then you have multiple other subheadings that are more specific forms of information about what plants need. Bold and italics are found within the text. A bold print is a text that is thicker or darker than the rest of the text to inform you of important words that can usually be found in the glossary. And italic text is slanted, and it also indicates important information that you need to pay attention to. Sidebar is a box with additional information, and a sidebar contains important information, but the information is not essential for the reader to know. It just provides us with a little bit of extra in relation to the topic, but it is not essential. So the main body of the text would be what is in gray, and then what is in white here would be an example of a sidebar. Not essential, but it kind of adds to our understanding. Now we're going to jump into those visual components of text features. We have photographs and illustrations. Photographs is an image that can be captured with a camera, and it shows a real-life image, like a real-life image of an alligator here. And an illustration is drawn by hand. A caption are words that are usually next to or below an image, diagram, chart, map that describes further about it. And so, for example, we have our photograph here of the alligator, and this caption tells us kind of what's happening in the photograph. The alligator shows onlookers that he doesn't like his space invaded by hissing and showing his mouth full of teeth. So if we didn't have that caption, we wouldn't necessarily know, okay, so why is he there with his mouth gaping open? Well, here is the caption informing us of that. Diagrams and labels. Diagram is an outline, drawing, or photograph that shows how something works or shows the parts of things. And labels are the words that are used on a diagram to name the specific parts of the diagram. So we have an example here. It's parts of the human eye. That is the diagram, whereas the labels are pointing to specific components in that diagram. So for example, we have the pupil here, and we have the eyelash here. Those two are examples of labels. Maps. They display the location of an object, place, or occurrence. For example, here is a map of Georgia. This is where I'm from. You can look at a map and find specific places, or maps can also show us specific occurrences. So this occurrence here is the European exploration of the Americas in 1500 through 1550. timeline is a line that represents important events in sequential order. That means in time order, in the way in which they occurred. And there are two types. There's both horizontal and vertical. The first is horizontal, and it goes from left to right, showing you the musical periods of the ages. We also have a vertical timeline, and this one is of a brief history of technology, and it goes from top to bottom. Charts, graphs, and tables. They organize the information and the relationships between two or more things in a visually pleasing way. So instead of you just reading all of that information, you can see it. So, for example, this pie chart shows different foods that are served in a cafeteria and what are the favorites. For this example, pizza is the favorite, my favorite too. Then we also have a bar graph here as well. This bar graph shows the average lifespan of some animals in the wild. So based upon looking at this graph, I can tell that the cheetah lives the shortest amount of time in the wild, whereas the animal that lives the longest in the wild is the African elephant. And then last but not least are tables. That is information or data that is organized in both rows and columns. So for example, you have the Mesozoic age, and that's where you can find out that the major event that happened there was first, dinosaurs roamed the earth, and then also they died out in that same age as well. So let's put this knowledge to use. So we're now looking at an article, the front page of that article, and I already see some text features that we've already discussed. For example, I see a heading labeled heat transfer. I see subheadings, that's heat through solids, heat through fluids. Those are more specific. And then I also see a photograph that will contribute to my understanding once I've read this entire text. I also see another subheading, another photograph, a diagram, diagrams and labels here at the bottom, as well as a caption that tells me more about that diagram and those labels. So how do I exactly use the text features to help me when answering questions? So here's some steps you can take. Some of my scholars ask me, can you annotate text features? Absolutely, yes, you can. And what information do you learn for the diagram, chart, etc. about blank that you cannot learn in the text? So there's some things that text features can visually show us that the text just can't tell us. How does the graph, table, chart help you better understand the text? Why is the photograph, illustration, or diagram included in this passage? Why would the author include this here? How does it support my understanding? And which information in the text help me understand the graph, chart, or table? So again, we have that same article. We're going to read through it, and with those text features that we've already labeled, we're going to see how they contribute to our overall understanding. So that heading is heat transfer. Pop, pop, pop. Have you ever listened as you popped a bag of popcorn? Each time you hear one of those kernels pop, heat is being transferred. Just like other forms of energy, heat energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred. There are 3 types of heat transfer, and all can be demonstrated by making popcorn. And so here's our subheading. So this is going to tell us a little bit of information about heat through specifically just solids within this paragraph. Conduction is a direct transfer of heat from one object to another. Because heat will always travel to colder objects, when a hot object touches another object, heat will transfer. When making popcorn in a pan, the heat will transfer from your stovetop burner or another heating element to the pan. The pan will then transfer heat to your kernels, turning the water within the kernel into steam or vapor, popping your corn. So conduction is heat transfer by touch. Heat through fluids. You can also pop your popcorn in an appliance called an air popper. These devices circulate hot and cool air in order to transfer heat by air movement. This would be considered convection because convection is heat transfer by currents in a fluid. Convection occurs in all fluids, like air, water, and even magma. When matter is heated, energy is transferred, causing the molecules to move more rapidly. When the molecules in a fluid are heated, the Energy that makes them move more rapidly also causes them to travel upward. The cooler fluids at the top begin to sink until they are heated and travel again upward, continuing the cycle. Hot air rises, cool air sinks. In the air popper, so I'm going to pause here, this right here is that photograph of the air popper. So that is what, if I don't know what an air popper is, that is how the author is helping me figure that out. Kernels are poured into the bottom, where a heating element will blow hot air. The hot air rises while cooler air sinks, traveling in a cycle. As the hot air passes through the kernels, some heat is transferred, turning the water inside the kernel into vapor and popping the corn. Heat through space. Radiation is the transfer of heat by electromagnetic waves. Radiant heat transfer does not require matter like conduction and convection. For example, radiant heat from the sun can travel through space and heat the earth. Anytime heat transfers outward from an object through space, it is radiation. Radiation can also transfer heat in a microwave. A microwave heats food by using electromagnetic waves. So, our microwave popcorn is cooked by radiation. The waves carry heat through the popcorn kernels. The water turns to vapor and pop. So here we also have this diagram below, and here the caption reads, heat transfer can be shown in the boiling of water. So here we have radiation, we have a fire, so I'm assuming that maybe the fire is the use of electromagnetic waves, which then heats up the pan, which is convection, which makes the handle here hot, known as conduction. So that is how the author can provide you with some text features that help you better understand what you just read. So now we have a short response question. And the question is, how does the diagram contribute to your understanding of how energy is used to boil water? Use 2 details from the text to support your response. Now, you're not limited to 2, but you have to at least make sure that you have at least 2. So in parentheses here, I said, use your extended response sentence structure. So first, we always like to restate our question. So here we go. There's our restate. The diagram contributes to my understanding of how water boils because it shows how all 3 types of heat energy are used. So there's my answer. So in that first sentence, I'm going to have my restate answer. You'll notice that it's in a little wonky of a format here. However, soon enough, I'll be able to form that all together. But I wanted to show you each and every part. So that restate answer, again, is the diagram contributes to my understanding of how water boils because it shows how all 3 types of heat energy are used. For example, so here's my first detail. I used a text evidence sentence starter here, and then I'm going to use details from the diagram, which this is the diagram we're referring to, and I'm also going to use information from the text. So for example, the diagram shows the heat represented by radiation, which is when heat is transferred by electromagnetic waves. So I can tell from the image here that this is radiation, but it doesn't really tell me the definition of what radiation is, but that is found in the text. So I used both the diagram here and the text to help me better answer this question. Then we're going to have another detail. Next, according to the diagram, convection occurs. So again, I'm going to be using our image here, our diagram. Convection occurs by heating the water in the pan, making it start to boil, or as the text states, the molecules move more rapidly, and that's found at the bottom of that first page here. Then I have my last detail, which leads to conduction. Again, I got that from our diagram on the back side of the article, which is direct transfer of heat from one object to another. In this case, would be the handling of the pot. The handle of the pot is getting hot. And then now, so I have my restate and answer, which are in red and orange, and then I have my details, evidence, and support that are in green, blue, and then a darker blue. And then now I have the most important part, which is my analysis statement or my conclusion statement. where it ties everything together. This proves how the diagram assisted in my understanding of how energy is used to boil water because it shows a visual interpretation of heat transfer when the three types of energy being used. Sorry. So again, here is it all again together with our restate, answer, details, and our analysis statement. So this is how your short response questions should be formed when referring to a text feature, specifically a visual text feature, because it's showing you something that the text can't or isn't necessarily telling you. So again, let's review. The two types of nonfiction text features are within the text features and visual/graphic text features. And they both contribute to our overall understanding of the text by providing us with additional information, whether visually, orally, or quantitatively. And it also shows us what the text might not be able to explain.